did that make you feel? Scared? Nervous? Excited? Thrilled? Look, however it made you feel, great, perfect. That's kind of what this session is about. But before we get into that, hi, my name's Anthony Hill, and I'm the head of customer experience at Flinders University, where I've been for just over 18 months. Before that, I spent 18 years in Hong Kong, where I was consulting across finance, insurance, fashion, retail, utilities, you name it. And when I asked my boss why she took a chance on some random guy from Hong Kong with no higher ed experience, she said, I'm looking to do things a little different. And that's why I'm here. Today, I want to share with you how we are doing things a little different at Flinders University, and how a shark, a princess, and an ancient book are shaping the way that we approach customer experience. So the Jaws theme tune wasn't just for drama. Nope, it had a purpose. It was foreshadowing, because I want to kick things off by doing something unexpected. I'm going to call bullshit on something. I'm going to call bullshit on something that I care deeply about, on something that I've built a career around, on something that I imagine will shock quite a few people in this room. I'm going to call bullshit on customer experience. That's right, I'm just going to let that hang out there for a moment so it can sink in. Some of you are doing this right now. I've got recruiters messaging my boss. People are shifting nervously in their seats. So let me just be clear. I'm not calling bullshit on customer experience itself, but what I am calling out is what I feel we've done to it. We've turned it into a numbers game. We chase metrics. We prioritize dashboards. We make decisions based on scores. Now, don't get me wrong, metrics do matter. Among many other things, they help us understand where we have been and where we are going. But customer experience is so much more than just numbers. Let me show you what I mean. I came across this recently, the Honest Glossary. Has anyone seen this before? They're hilarious. They provide funny and brutal takedowns of all sorts of business jargon and terminology. This one's for CX. Let's take a look. What is it saying about SEO? Boring. CSAT, customer satisfaction. Traffic light buttons with fake smiles. Task success rate. How often users don't complain. Here's a big one. Conversion rate. Dollars. Maybe. But also, maybe not. Error rate. How often things break. And finally, good old NPS. Everybody nods. Yeah, NPS. Nobody really knows. NPS is probably the most quoted CX metric on the planet. But the truth is, very few people properly understand it. It often gets confused with customer satisfaction. And really, I feel it oversimplifies the experience to a single number. This nails it. It's got that classic NPS question. How likely would you be to recommend Windows 10 to a friend or colleague? And I love this answer. I need you to understand that people don't just sit around where they randomly recommend operating systems to each other. I love it. The thing is, it's funny because it's true. Now, I imagine there's people in this room that are thinking, why is this B2C guy in a B2B track? And I get it. It's a fair question, look. And I could tell you how universities have long lead pipelines and multiple stakeholders, but that's not really why I'm here. Can I get a show of hands? How many B2B marketers do we have in the room? Okay, we've got a few. I'll be honest, for me, it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C. For me, it's always H to H, human to human. And when you're dealing with humans, you're in the business of one thing: feelings, emotions. We like to think that we're rational, logical, data-driven, but research tells a different story. Up to 50% of people are emotionally connected to the brands that they buy. In B2B, that number goes up as high as 70%. In B2C, 95% of decisions are made based on emotional connection. 66%, and B2B, 66%. And the impact of that, emotional connection makes B2C customers 33% less price sensitive, and in B2B, 8 times more likely to pay a premium. When it comes to actually buying, emotionally connected B2C customers are 52% more valuable, and in B2B, 13 times more likely to buy. The data is clear, and yet we try to distill all of that emotion into a single number. It just doesn't work. Did you know that we have over 18 different heart emojis that represent a plethora of different types of love? For, the love that I have for my kids, that would be a 10 out of 10, absolutely no doubt about it. Be the same for my wife, be the same for my folks. But each of those loves is not the same. Each of those loves is different. And the truth is, emotions are just far too nuanced and complex for a single number. So if we're not going to lead with metrics, if we're not leading with numbers, what are we leading with? We lead with stories. Terry Pratchett said that people think that stories are shaped by people, but in fact, it's the other way around. And this quote is spot on. Yes, people create stories, people tell stories, but stories have the power to change us. They move us, and they connect us. Stories do far more than just entertain. When we listen to them, our brains release chemicals that do some amazing things. These chemicals build trust, create memories, and form emotional connections between us and the storyteller. And the connection goes far beyond that, to the point that stories can actually sync up our brains. Research shows when a storyteller tells a great story, a listener's brainwave actually matches theirs. They call it cognitive mirroring. And the power of all of that pays off. In a study called Significant Objects, 2 guys ran an experiment to test a simple idea. Could adding stories to worthless objects increase their value? They went to junk shops, garage sales, thrift stores, and they bought a whole host of random objects, say ceramic bust, a weird spoon, and paid no more than a few dollars for each item. They then got writers to create fictional stories for each one and then listed them on eBay using the stories as item descriptions. Something that cost $1.25 sold for $40, a 50-cent trinket sold for $30, and so on. Across 100 objects, they spent about $128, and in return, they made over $3,600. That's an incredible 2,706% increase, all driven by story. Now, this is a perfect moment. I just want to pause, stop to admire what I think is one of the best, for those B2B marketers out there, one of the best B2B ads ever created.
I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of bumpy roads and heavy winds. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you. What you see is a body crafted to perfection, a pair of legs engineered to defy the laws of physics, and a mindset to master the most epic of splits.
I love that ad. I love that ad. But it's more than just an ad, it's a story. And what followed was incredible. Over 100 million views on YouTube within a matter of days. A 24% increase in sales, and it generated an estimated $170 million in revenue. That is what happens when you connect with emotion. That is what happens when you lead with story. So I've shown you what the power of storytelling can do. Now I want to tell you 3 stories about how storytelling has shaped the way that we approach customer experience at Flinders University. Let's start with the story of the ancient book. So I'm going to ask a question. What's the toughest customer you've ever had to win over? Is it public sector? Private? In my experience, it's neither. The toughest customer, the most skeptical, resistant customer is your own organization. Anyone else feel that? We spend our days trying to influence the outside world when it's within our own organization where the real resistance lives. When I first started at Flinders, customer experience wasn't just underfunded, it was invisible. It wasn't part of the strategy, it wasn't part of the culture, it was barely part of the conversations. There was no governance or frameworks, just a very small team that was seen as a service desk for the university. And while I came in full of ambition, ready to change the game, I quickly realized that I was going to have to do something different if that was going to be achievable. We could have ran maturity assessments, introduced governance and training, but in a culture that didn't value CX, that wasn't going to land. Not yet. We knew if we were going to get people to care about CX, we first needed to get them to believe. Not just belief in CX, but belief in a new way of thinking, doing, and being. And the way to spark that belief didn't come from a business book, it came from something much older. One night I was sat in my living room, scratching my head, thinking, how are we going to shift an entire organizational mindset? How are we going to get people to care about something they haven't really seen or valued before? And then I saw it, sitting on the shelf. The Bible. Now let me be clear, this is not about religion. But whether or not you see the Bible as sacred, it is something else too. It is one of the most enduring storytelling platforms in human history. For over 2,000 years, these stories have been told, retold, and passed down through generations. And in doing so, it has inspired belief and gathered millions of followers. That is what we needed, albeit on a much smaller scale. So here's what we did. We started small, we fixed things, we improved things, we solved problems that mattered to people. These were our mini miracles, and we wrapped each one in a story. We used the classic 3-act hero versus villain story arc. It's familiar, it's relatable, and it gets people behind the hero, which in our case was CX. Act 1, we introduce the villain. We give the background, the context, and the big problem that needs to be solved. Act 2, the hero's journey. We show how we tackled the problem head on, what we did, what we found, the insights, all building towards that recommendation. Act 3, the resolution, the impact, the outcomes. What changed as a result of our recommendations and the difference it made. This helped the stories to live and breathe on their own. This helped them to be shared and retold. And there were. From team meetings to executive floors, these stories spread throughout the university. Slide decks that didn't just inform, they stuck. Stories that brought the work to life. Today, CX language is embedded in the highest levels of the university. Our team has doubled. We're on the verge of tripling in size. We are leading some of the most significant digital transformation projects this university has ever seen, backed by serious investment. A colleague recently joked that our decks have become so persuasive, they're stealing budget from other departments. I'll take that. And that's the story of the ancient book and how within 12 months we were able to shift from being invisible to influential, from being a service provider to being a strategic partner, all with the power of the story. Let's move on to the next story, The Princess. This story starts in 1937. Disney were taking a massive gamble. They wanted to create the world's first full-length animated film. It was so risky that critics called it Disney's folly. If it failed, the studio would go under. So to de-risk the project, they storyboarded the entire film before animating a single frame. This helped to align everyone around a clear vision for the story and the emotional journey they wanted to take the audience on. Each panel represented a key moment. Together, it outlined the entire viewing experience. That movie was Snow White. And it didn't just succeed, it launched the Disney empire. But that's not the story that inspired us. What inspired us is how that same approach was later used to shape Airbnb's thinking. By 2009, Airbnb had gained traction, but growth had plateaued. The product worked, the website worked, but something key was missing. They realized they were thinking like engineers, focused on features, functions, and interfaces. But to truly connect with their customers, they needed to think differently. They looked to Disney for inspiration, masters of storytelling and emotional design, and they storyboarded the entire guest experience as a series of 11 emotional moments. They even brought in a Pixar artist to illustrate key scenes. Moments like searching for a trusted listing, anxiously waiting for host responses, and arriving late at night hoping the key will be there. These storyboards revealed emotional challenges that the numbers alone just didn't. Anxiety about host interactions, lack of trust in listings, and the real tension of arrival. These insights led to real changes like trust indicators, professional photography, and better onboarding for hosts. They called it the Snow White Project, and it helped Airbnb shift from functioning product to meaningful experience. And with it, growth followed. So how are we using this idea at Flinders? Well, like Airbnb, when we mapped our customer journeys, we also storyboarded the emotional journey. What are people thinking and feeling at every step? This helped to reveal the emotional drop-offs and the moments of friction that the numbers alone just didn't. It also helped to build empathy across our teams and gave us a clear sense of what it's really like to be in our customers' shoes. We applied that same thinking to the website, zooming in to understand emotional needs at specific points. And we used those insights to improve key parts of the experience. Things like refining our language to be more universally accessible and engaging for our audience, and introducing interactive tools designed to support clearer decision-making and empower users at key moments. This led to feedback that it made the experience feel more intuitive, supportive, and enjoyable. And the results speak for themselves. A 25% increase in engagement rate and a 22% increase in conversion rate. And that is how a princess helped us see our customers more clearly and uncover the insights that the numbers alone just didn't. Now the third and final story. I think this is the one that everyone's been waiting for, the shark. Did anyone else have this irrational childhood fear? Or was it just me? Yeah, you had it too. Okay, great. I remember being absolutely convinced that one day, just one day, I would see a great white shark fin slice through the surface of our tiny town swimming pool in rural England. Of course, that never happened, but the fear was very real. And I know exactly where it came from. Jaws, the greatest shark movie of all time, no contest. And fittingly, this year's its 50th anniversary. This movie, I can tell you, this movie sparked a full-blown shark obsession in me. I went to the library and I checked out every single book they had on sharks. But we're not here to talk about my weird childhood phase. We're here to talk about how Jaws still holds up as the greatest of all time 5 decades on. Now, can anyone tell me how many minutes of actual shark footage are in Jaws? Anyone? Take a guess. A wild guess. Who said? You're absolutely right. 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes of shark footage, 4 minutes in a 2-hour movie. That's just 3% of the entire film. Incredible, right? Now, this is partly due to the fact that Bruce, the mechanical shark, kept on breaking down. But Steven Spielberg used that limitation to his advantage. He leaned into the suspense. He focused on tension, and he leveraged what we in CX call moments that matter. What are moments that matter? They're emotional spikes in experience. They're the peaks. They're the memories we actually keep. If you think about a holiday, you don't remember every single minute of it. You remember in snapshots, that perfect meal, that beautiful sunset, the missed flight, the rainstorm that turned into a funny story. That's how our brains are wired. We don't remember the whole experience, we remember in moments. And those moments shape the experience, shape the story we tell ourselves about that whole experience. There's a great example of this here in Adelaide, at Haigs. You're at the register, staring at that eye-watering total, and just before that post-purchase regret kicks in, what do? They give you chocolate. They literally sweeten the deal. And you don't walk out thinking, oh my God, I just spent $97 on truffles. You walk out thinking, wow, that chocolate was amazing. That is a moment that matters. And Spielberg did the same thing. He knew he didn't need 120 minutes of Shark. He just needed 4 unforgettable minutes. And we borrowed that playbook. We mapped our customer journeys end to end, months of interviews, research, and observations, and we looked for those Jaws moments, the chocolate at the counter moments, the moments that mattered, the moments that shaped decisions, the ones that people remembered, bad or good. We knew if we could get those right, we wouldn't need to improve everything immediately. Like Spielberg, we focused on that 3% that would have 90% of the impact. And I want to show you how that focus had made a difference on our email and social performance. On socials, by zooming into those moments that matter, we were able to reduce our social content by 1/3, but deliver much bigger results. 7 million more video views and a 250% video play rate increase. On emails, same principle applied. By developing key content that aligns with those key moments, we were able to deliver exactly what our customers needed when they needed at those key moments. This resulted in 74% open rates, 42% more open emails, and 30% more click-throughs. And that is how a Shark taught us that not all parts of the experience are built equal. And when you focus on the ones that matter most, great results will follow. Now, I realized something. I'm stood here at a digital marketing event, and I haven't talked much about digital. And that's not an accident, because I believe deeply in this quote by the late, great Steve Jobs. He said, you've got to start with the customer experience first and work your way back to the technology. Yes, technology matters. Yes, digital matters, but they're just tools. Start with the experience first. And it's the same with the numbers. Yes, the numbers matter, the metrics matter, but start with the story first and work your way back to those numbers. And that leads me to the last thing that I want to share with you. It's one of my favorite ads of all time. It's got no product shots, it's got no technology, it's got no numbers, just pure storytelling, crafted to inspire belief, crafted to be memorable, crafted to connect with emotion. And it ends with a call to action, which I believe perfectly captures how I think we need to approach customer experience, by just thinking a little bit differently. Let's take a look.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Thank you.
What an inspiring way to finish off. Anthony Hill, everybody. Anthony.
Yes.
Sorry. It is written with a H, but it is pronounced Anthony. Can you explain that?
Not really,
Is that your mum being creative? Because my mum was creative. I'm Chanel with an S.
So I think it started off as being Anthony. But, oh, sorry. I think it started off this way, this way.
Are we too far the other way now?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Okay. I think it started off as Anthony. That was my mum's intention, but I think I just couldn't pronounce the first sound when I was a kid, so it just turned into Anthony. And
Perfect. We love it. I must admit as well, when you played that shark music, Richard walked in at the time that the shark music was playing. I thought, yourself and Ryan are going to do that interpretive dance, aren't you? Twinkle toes. What a great way. I mean, to finish off the B2B, because we've had so much information on statistics and numbers, which is so valuable because that's what we're driven by now. But to bring it back to that H2H, which is what you said, the human to human, is so valuable. And a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit for how they can tell their stories. They think, oh, I'm not a good storyteller, or I include too much detail, I'm not good at it. It is a learned skill, isn't it? For someone who wants to possibly get better at it.
Yeah, so look, I think there's two sides to this. I think on one side, I think we're all inherently storytellers. Like if I was to ask you what you did this morning, you would tell me a story about it. And essentially, at a basic level, a story is a series of events that has a start, middle, and end. But yeah, like I agree with you. There's all levels of how good people are at storytelling, and it's a muscle that you've got to kind of, exercise and push yourself on for sure.
It's one of those things where you can use certain formulas, can't you, as well? So maybe you tell the punchline at the beginning of the story. I heard a story once that was a girl said she went travelling and she had her bag stolen, but she had an air tag in her bag. So straight away people are going, what's next? Where did the bag go? And her story went on to say how she actually found her bag, and it was in a foreign country, somewhere she'd never been before, in some back alley. It was a crazy story, but it started off to bait people perfectly.
Yeah, no.
So there's those kind of formulas. Can you shed some light on some formulas that have maybe worked for you?
Look, I think the one that I shared there is the one that's hands down worked for us the most. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head any other formulas, but a lot of them I just get from reading books, or even like listening to the stories that my kids tell me. I'm like, oh, that's a great way of kind of breaking down a complex problem, because kids, they need to break them down. They need to break down something to tell you. So you listen to your kids, they tell you a story, and you're like, great, and I'll kind of go away and write that down. Watching movies, like I think, I take one like a rom-com, right? A rom-com would have a certain structure to that movie, then you can kind of copy for your own comms.
And what stands out, I think it's trusting our gut and intuition on what stories land with us and how they make us feel, and how maybe that formula, when you might not understand exactly how that person got to that point, it's how that made you feel. So maybe if you can apply that in a business sense, you're in the right direction. It's also a good way to sell to media, isn't it, too? Because they want the idea you have for their consumer.
Yeah.
Because the story in it is what's going to sell more so than just sprouting facts about a business or something like that, or yourself.
Yeah, like if I was just to say something like, 33% of people are going to fall in love by the end of the day. It's kind of like, it's abstract number, 33%. You can't really picture that. But if I was to then say to you, like, okay, everyone look to their left and look to their right. One of you three is going to fall in, statistics say one of you three are going to fall in love by the end of the day. I've just turned that more into a story. I've made it more relatable, made it more human. So, just can't try to think of things like that. How do you relate it back to what's more relatable to us?
And are you saying potentially that metrics don't matter as much, considering we're in a data-obsessed world? It feels risky.
God, I could talk all day about what I think about data and metrics. Look, I think for me they do really matter, and I've got someone here in my team who is the data and metrics person, so I'm going to be careful about what I say. But, what I see them is like one point of triangulation, right? So, and I think like they are one part of your picture of your customer or your consumer, and it needs to be a multi-dimensional picture to kind of truly understand them. So yes, metrics matter. They helped you to understand like the what, but you're going to have to like dig in deeper to kind of understand the why. And I've got a little bit of a problem with like the term data-driven. I prefer the term insight-driven, because anything that's like data-driven, I feel it's more surface level. And to really kind of understand, to get that understanding, you've got to go that next level down, which is insights.
Find out what connects.
Yeah.
This is a great question that just come in via Slido. What research tools or methods did you use to map the emotional part of the customer journey?
So we worked with an agency, and it was basically a lot of in-person interviews. So we went out and we looked at the different personas we had, and we were like, okay, let's recruit dozens of people, and it was just hours of interviews, hours of watching them go through our website and go through other websites. And then we took all of that hours of interviews and research, market research and observations, and then just kind of distilled it down and helped to map out those journeys. And we went back and like validated that once we mapped it out, and we spoke to prospective students and validated all of that. But yeah, it took months. Interviews, market research, observations of people on the internet, what they're doing.
It's looking around the edges, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of your business or the model that you're trying to portray, because often the best stories are not completely visible to the eye or the ear in that moment, because we are cluttered with a lot of noise. So it's looking around for those small little moments that stand out, or people's stories, maybe employees within the business, would you say?
Look, I think, so one of my favorite stories about data and misreading the data is Tom Brady. Who knows Tom Brady here? Or I should say the ex-husband of Giselle. And more people like that. So when Tom Brady was first drafted, he was 199th picked in the 6th round of draft. And he was picked as a backup. It's literally someone to sit on the bench. We know that he went on, I think he won got 5 rings. He broke so many records. I think he's the oldest Super Bowl winner. But the metrics said that he shouldn't be great at all. All the data said that he shouldn't be great. But like once you started looking beneath that data, he had incredible leadership skills. He had great empathy, great game IQ. And those are the things that are below the surface level data.
Excellent. Perfect example. My final question, how do you bring emotion to the table when your audience, or let's say leadership team, only wants numbers?
I would say, I find that very rare that it happens, but what I say then is like sneak it in. So you can just change the numbers. So I can give an example. We could go through and say like, okay, only 5% of the, looking at our website, only 5% of the, or 5% of the Australian population can't read the website, or 1.3 million people. So the senior executive team might look at that and be like, 5%, that seems pretty small. Only 1.3 million out of the whole population of Australia. But then if you how do we flip that? How do we flip that to be more relatable? And you could be like, well, that's the entire population of Adelaide. When someone thinks like, well, essentially the entire population of Adelaide couldn't read our website, then that brings it home. And that kind of starts to bring it into a story that's relatable to them.
Using different ideas
Yeah.
and comparisons and
Yeah,
things
so
like that are relatable.
Just flip the numbers, yeah.
Have you got any ideas on and suggestions on, maybe if you've got quite a data-driven business, everything's very serious and focused, how an example of maybe an analogy might work? I heard one recently when someone described satellites moving in space. And he said, if you want to know what they look like, picture a dragonfly moving from flower to flower. Now, we all understand that because we've seen dragonflies move. Therefore, now we don't have to fly up to space to see that. So suddenly that's a story, very quick one, that's broken that down. Have you got any examples of something like that that may have worked in the education or any of your other stories as well? Your background?
It's not an analogy, but it's a. So I went to go and speak to someone about how I felt like the data strategy wasn't at Flinders, it was somewhere else when I was consulting previously. And I needed to kind of think of like, how can I explain this in simple terms? And there's this line from, I think, the second Batman movie, The Joker. And there's a line in it, he says like, I'm like a dog chasing cars. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it when I catch it. And that's basically what their data strategy was. They were just grabbing all of this data in. They didn't really know what they were going to do when they get it. So, you know.
Things like that.
Yeah, things like that.
Thank you so much. Please give this wonderful man a round of applause.
Thank you.
Anthony Hill, Flinders University.